My human self presents to me many challenges that burden me. My heart center shines and calls to me. This is who I choose to be. Sometimes lessons.
Welcome to the Vibrational Alchemy Podcast. This is Penny Fisher, and we are so glad you are joining us for this week's episode. Hello, beautiful souls. So glad to be with you today, as always, as we continue and actually finish up this arc that we've been working in that we're calling the Keys to the Kingdom. This is the last key. We're going to talk about surrender today. And I struggled with this a little bit, full disclosure. But I'll share more about that as we spend our time together today. So this arc comes from a book called The Way of Mastery. And in case you weren't able to be with us for the last 2 weeks, I just want to share a little bit about that book. It's a channeled book. And the introduction tells us, and I'm going to read a quote from the introduction, the lessons that are in this book, and I quote now, reveal the way taught to Yeshua or Jesus himself and are now lovingly presented by him for you so that the choice for love becomes your every thought, your every breath, your every action extended to the world. And so one of the lessons in the first part of this book, called The Way of the Heart, talks about a pathway or stages that lead us into, here I'll quote again, this is beautiful, lead us to a reality in which, and now I quote, there will be peace from the crown of the head to the tips of the toes, and that peace will walk before you wherever you go. I mean, come on, who doesn't want that? And he calls these stages the keys to the kingdom. So a few weeks ago, we talked about harnessing the power of desire and the importance that we've attached to, or not the importance, I guess, but the judgment that we've been acculturated to place on desire. Last week, we talked about coming into alignment with allowance. And this week, we're going to talk about the balance and ease that comes when we move into this final stage of the process. And this is the idea of surrender. Right. And as I mentioned a minute ago, as I was preparing for this, I found that I was really struggling with the difference between allowance and surrender. I'm like, aren't they the same thing? Isn't this, like we talked about last week, giving up this illusion of control? And isn't that the same? Isn't that what surrender is? And so I went back into the text and I spent some time there. And as I was really sitting with it and letting it seep in, I had a few aha moments. And I think I get it now. And that's what I want to unpack with you a little bit today. But I will share that I was gifted an image. And the image was an image of a doorway, with the door closed. And what my guides told me is that being in a state of allowance is like being given the key to the door. So when I am in a state of allowance, I know that I can unlock that door and I can open it. So allowance opens the door. Surrender is another level of letting go And surrender is what allows me to walk through the door. Okay, so we'll see if we can get that to make some sense. Surrender, like we said, is another level of allowance. It is another level of releasing control to such an extent that we are able to experience a state of expansion. Oh, I just breathe thinking about that. A state of such expansion that from this space, we can acknowledge our own divinity, the truth of who we are, in a way that we can't until we surrender completely. We've talked before about this idea about a hose, right? And energy, love, compassion, forgiveness, all these things flowing through the hose, and that there are certain thoughts or emotions that will actually put a kink in the hose. And the more that we step into surrender, the more it unkinks the hose and allows that remembering, that's the word, the remembering of who we are to flow through that hose and into ourselves. And here's the really cool thing about getting to that level, that space of complete surrender, is that we, at that point, have this aha moment. And it goes something like this. If I am the divine, if I am divine, if I am of God, source, creator, all that is, however you experience source energy, then that means that just like source, me, little old me, I am responsible for all of creation. Mind blown. I have the ability to impact every aspect of creation. And in my complete surrender, as I unkink that hose, as I widen the hose, as I invite in the love, the complete unconditional love of source energy, and allow it to flow into me and through me and out into the world, I impact everyone and everything, right? I have to take another level of responsibility, and being in a state of surrender allows me to do that. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel. Let me tell you what the Way of Mastery says. Eventually, you come to see that because you are source, you are responsible for the whole of creation. You cannot think a thought without disturbing the farthest of stars. It is that responsibility from which you have shrunk because you have feared being responsible for the whole. You come to recognize that your greatest joy, your greatest fulfillment is wholly and deliberately accepting responsibility for the whole of creation. Why? Because you suddenly realize that you can accept responsibility for anything and everything, because through you, all power under heaven and earth is made to flow to manifest the love of source. Oh my gosh, my darling soul family, that is who we are. We are conduits, we are channels, we are bridges that bring the love of God. God is source, creator, all that is, to earth. And in the space of surrender, all of that mind chatter that tells us, you can fill in the blank. We're not worthy. We're not good enough. We couldn't possibly. And then, at least for me, the recovering perfectionist, it becomes, but what if I can't? What if I make a mistake? What if I mess something up? Ooh, and I'm just going to exhale because I can feel myself just going into like just this contraction. And I breathe and I surrender and I trust that that is who I am. It's who I'm meant to be. As Gordon's beautiful song says at the beginning and the end of our podcast every week, this is who I get to choose to be, right? And now here comes the conundrum, at least for me, when I'm stuck in my head. This is another kink in the hose, being stuck in my intellect. So last week, when we talked about allowance, we really dug into this idea of releasing control, which we know is just an illusion anyhow. So, hey, let's let it go. But my training, my acculturation, the way I've been taught to use my analytical mind tells me that if I am responsible for everything, that I need to control what's happening. I need to get this right, right? What happens if something goes wrong? Isn't it my job to fix it? Or, or should I have created an environment that was different so that the thing that went wrong wouldn't have gone wrong in the first place? Right? If I boil it down, what my ego, my beautiful little ego self that is in my head and not in my heart, what my ego is telling me is, Penny, having control and being responsible, they go together. You can't have one without the other. Ooh, freaks me out. And so that's the place now where I use my tools. I breathe, I ground, I connect with my guides. And I realize that when I get into that spin, and it is a spin, friends, it is this vortex that can drag me right down. When we get into that spin, we need to breathe in order to open up space and remind ourselves that this is another energetic that we've been trained into, that we are ready now to release out of our cup. It's another layer of surrender, right? When I release the need to control, when I release the illusion that in order to be responsible, I have to have control, I empty out and I make more room for love. I widen the hose and make more room for the flow of source energy. And I realized that the only place that there's any control, and it isn't even really control, it's a remembering, is how I choose to walk in the world. I can choose minute by minute who I want to be, how I want to think, what I want to say. Do I get it right? Is it always in alignment with what I want? Oh, no, it is not. I am human. I'm doing the best I can. But when I come into a space and I say something that later on I will think to myself, really, Penny? Where was the love? Where was the compassion? I can release even that judgment, and I can just say, I did the best I could in that moment. What was the woundedness that was triggered? How can I release it so that I can be more in alignment with love and light next time? And I love the way the universe brings us exactly what we need. I was literally just having this conversation with a dear, dear friend of mine just this morning. Beautiful, amazing human being. He does not see the world the way that I do and has chosen to stay in a place of fear, right? And this is just his journey. It's okay. What fear looks like for this beautiful soul is rage, rage at everything and everyone that is not in alignment with the way he sees the world, right? And as we were talking, I reminded him that he has a choice available to him. And that choice is his to make with every breath, with every thought, with every word that he chooses to speak. He can allow himself to feel the contraction of the rage, right? And this is really important. As somebody who has spent a lifetime stuffing down my emotions, I will tell you that that does us no good. So let yourself feel the anger, the rage, the grief, the resentment, whatever it is, the greed, the jealousy, whatever it is you're dealing with, feel it. And then you get to choose. You can stay there, and you can. Or you can choose to breathe, to release, and to remember that you don't need to control anything. All you need to do is remember who you are. And as you do that, you'll feel yourself, you'll literally feel yourself coming back into alignment. You'll feel it click in. Ah, yeah, I can feel all of you out there who are listening to this now or in the future. I can literally feel this exhale and this click as you remember, as you step into your heart space, right? You always have that choice. I share this with all of you, my darlings, because it becomes easier and easier for us to navigate the, and I air quote, stuff that life throws at us when we can stay in this space of recognizing the contraction when it comes, honoring it, and then using our tools. And how lucky are we at this time in the evolution of humankind that we have so many tools available to us. Some of you may resonate, yeah, pun intended, with sound healing, or you may need to get on a yoga mat or go for a walk in nature or have a loving conversation with a friend or dance around the house to beautiful high vibrational music, right? We use those tools to come back into alignment with our heart and with the flow of energy, remembering, my sweeties, that you send out a vibration that reaches, what did the Way of Mastery say? That reaches the farthest stars in the omniverse. And here's the key, at least for me. What other people do with that vibration of love that I send out is none of my business. As a recovering fixer, people come to me with their problems all the time, and I try to fix them for them, right? And what I'm realizing is that that's not how this goes. It's not my job to fix anyone or to make anything right for anyone. It is my job to hold space, to be love. There's another quote from the Way of Mastery, and I'm pulling this out of my head, but we want to be a perfect field of pure awareness through which love flows without obstruction. And within that field of pure awareness, we invite others in. Some of them will come and some of them will not. Some of them will come in and kind of look around and say, ooh, this is not for me. This freaks me out. And they'll go back to being angry, to being judgmental, to being competitive, to being, to craving power over others. And that's okay. That's their journey. All we need to do is remember who we are and stay in that place. At least from my experience, this is not a linear journey. This is not two steps forward and one back. This, for me, looks more like a series of loop-de-loops where I'm flowing in and out of surrender, right? There are days and times, weeks, maybe, well, rarely as weeks, maybe a couple of days where I feel like I'm in the flow of full surrender, and others where I feel fully contracted and like I can't do this, right? As we flow in and out, what you might notice, and I just want to give you a little heads up on this. We alluded to this a few minutes ago. You might start to notice contraction that is caused by this fear about responsibility. I'm responsible for all of creation. Are you kidding me? Give this to somebody else. And again, this is a place where and that's an illusion, right? That's a acculturation. So when that thought pops into your head, release it, sit and breathe. Drop from your head into your heart space and breathe. Open up that portal and either invite in the flow of the diamond light of the cosmic matrix or pass through that portal yourself. Right into the flow of that beautiful river of diamond light and let it just soak into you as it soaks into you every particle and every cell of your being. It'll flush away all of those old beliefs, those old wounds, those old habits, those old identities that you don't need anymore because you know who you are. And as you do this, you might actually notice a sensation of expansion. You might feel it in your physical body. You might feel it emotionally. You might have a big release. You might cry. You might laugh. You might yawn. You might release other gases from your body. I always love it when that happens with clients because it means that there's healing going on, right? There's releasing. And you just continue to breathe in the light and let yourself dissolve right into that space of pure light. Because from here, my darlings, from here, we are able to move through our experiences with more balance and ease. The Way of Mastery says this so perfectly. Check this out. Surrender means there is no longer any restlessness. Surrender is a state in which perfect peace is the foundation, not for passivity, not for inactivity, but for even more activity. Because as we release that grasping after control, that need to have more stuff, that need to follow the plan, have the bank account, get the car, get the relationship, as we release into that, release all of that and release into the flow, you'll notice that the things that are right for you are going to flow into your life, and you might find yourself busier than you've ever been. You might find yourself out there and partnering with other people or taking more on at your job or going out with friends more often. I don't know, whatever it looks like. Because when you're in alignment with unconditional love, joy becomes your natural state. And that is where you end up. You end up in the place that's right and perfect for you. It may be more quietness, but it'll be active, right? The way of mastery, again, I've got to go back to it because it's just so beautiful. You surrender into a way of being that the world can never know. It is a way of being in which your consciousness becomes totally open to your union with all of creation. And you will walk with, or you will talk with a leaf as it falls from a tree. You will see the soul of a kitten that you pet, and you will talk with angels and masters. You will know that energy and reality of wrapping your fingers around the entirety of the solar system and choosing to take responsibility. And gone will be your resistance to simply being responsible for your existence and your experience. Do you see it, my darlings? That's it. Surrender is letting go of everything else except being responsible for ourselves, because in doing so, we take responsibility for the whole of creation. There is a beautiful affirmation that I'd like to leave you with today. Let me read it once, and then we're going to drop into our hearts and we'll say it together 3 times out loud. And I would invite you to make this affirmation part of your daily practice, right? Affirmations I have found are most powerful when they are offered in multiples of 3. So say it 3 times, 6 times, 9 times, and really feel the words. But here it is again from the Way of Mastery. Let me read it once first. So just breathe and drop in. I and I alone am the source of what I experience and perceive. I am not a victim of the world I see. And everything I experience, I have called to myself plain and simple. No excuses, no ifs, ands, or buts. That's the way it is. And then we fill with light, knowing that we don't need excuses. All we need is to be love. So take a minute as we come to the end of our time together. Unless, of course, you're driving or walking or caring for children or doing something that requires your undivided attention, in which case, pause this, come back to it later, or just let it flow over you and continue your focus on what you're doing. Okay? I want you to be safe. That's what matters here. All right. So take a minute, darlings, and just breathe with me. Noticing your breath in through your nose and out through your nose, allowing your shoulders and your neck to stay relaxed as you breathe in slowly. Inhaling, feel your entire torso expand, and when you feel full, pause and reverse the flow, allowing the air to exit as slowly as it did coming in. And then another deep breath. Allow your breath now to take you down into your sacred heart space. Sit and rest here. Open the portal and invite in the diamond light of the cosmic matrix to fill and flood your sacred heart space. And we affirm our divinity, our perfection, and our brilliance as we release old conditioning and say together 3 times. And I'll say a few words and then you can repeat after me, either aloud or in your hearts, in your own sacred space. I and I alone am the source of what I experience and perceive. I'm not a victim of the world I see and everything I experience. I have called to myself, plain and simple. No excuses, no ifs, ands, or buts. That's the way it is. I and I alone am the source of what I experience and perceive. I'm not a victim of the world I see, and everything I experience, I have called to myself, plain and simple. No excuses, no ifs, ands, or buts. That's the way it is. I and I alone am the source of what I experience and perceive. I'm not a victim of the world I see, and everything I experience, I have called to myself, plain and simple. No excuses, no ifs, ands, or buts. That's the way it is. And breathe. And as you really rest with that affirmation, you might notice some fear coming up. Breathe into it. And remember that you are affirming this to expand yourself so that you understand that your beautiful light is so needed by the world. Your brilliance is a gift. No more playing small. You'll find places where you've judged yourself. You'll start to remember places where you've slipped out of alignment. And it's okay. Just send yourself love. You haven't done anything wrong. All of those places point you back to where you're holding wounds that just need more love. They just need more light. And the more we do this inner work, the more we allow that connection to source energy to deepen until we can melt into that connection, that light, that energy of love, and simply be that. And my darlings, that is how Source sees you, because it's who you are. Love, perfection, light, joy. And you are a gift. I am so grateful to each of you for joining me for this episode. I am Penny Starhart, and this has been the Vibrational Alchemy Podcast. Until we are together again, remember always that you are loved and you are love.
This is who I choose to be. This is who I choose to